I used to help out at a nursing home. This old Russian lady would relate the same tale over and over. Her husband drank and hit her. It was sad for sure. But one day she leaned over and whispered he was asshole drunk, so I pushed him downstairs. Dead. My dirtbag uncle convinced my grandmother to hand over her power of attorney to him and then proceeded to sell her house and put her into a senior living home when she was only in her 50s. He left her there to rot and then threw out most of her belongings and absconded with all of the family heirlooms from my great-grandfather, who was a famous artisan. In the intervening years he pawned off most of the heirlooms as he continued to scam his way across the country. Last I heard, he had somehow swindled his way into being a judge in Montana. He tried calling my dad a year or so ago and lying about what he had done to my grandmother. My dad called him out on that shit, and the dirtbag hasn't tried contacting any of us since. Now that my sister and I are grown, living on comfortable wages, we have been slowly buying my great-grandfather's works as we see them appear up for auction or on eBay to bring them back into the family. A couple years ago, we found one of my great-grandfather's pieces that my dad had thought to be lost forever and surprised him with it for Christmas. I don't think I've ever seen him more overjoyed than he was that day. I lied about not being able to see, and completely ruined my vision. When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that people wearing glasses were super cool. They always seemed to be smarter and what I perceived to be more popular. I wanted to wear glasses, but I could see perfectly fine. So I lied. When the annual in-school eye exam came around, I lied to the student nurse and my parents. I pretended that I was unable to read the test on the cards, even though I could see it perfectly fine. This earned me an appointment with the optometrist, where I lied, again, to her as well. This landed me in my nice and shiny prescription glasses. I got what I wanted. I was a 3rd grader with glasses. Cool like everyone else. And, I played myself. Turns out, wearing prescription glasses when you do not need them will totally ruins your vision, actually. Here I am, age 23. Blind as a bat. Still wear contacts or glasses to this day, eyesight progressively worsening, with astigmatism in both eyes. I've never told anyone this, from 7 years old to 23. This didn't happen for 2 reasons. 1, it's medically impossible. Correlation does not equal causation. Maybe your vision got worse during this time, but it had nothing to do with glasses. It's very hard to damage your vision. This is not one of the ways you can do so. It's an urban legend. Because of correlation and superstition. 2, you skipped over the optometry appointment for a reason. I've had a number of them, and it's bloody hard enough for me as somebody who wears corrective lenses to work with the doctor to figure out which lens is the right one. They'd know you were faking very, very quickly. Do you guys agree with this response? Please let me know in the comments. I threw away a guy's condom so he could get me pregnant. So recently the team I cheerlead for had a huge win in our state, so as always the rich kids had a party, and since we're finally old enough we got invited to it. It was such a fun night, I got a little bit drunk, and me and this older boy who I had a crush on for ages were hitting it off real well. He asks if I wanted to go somewhere private. He took me to a spare room and we're just all over each other, and after, I had him in my mouth for a bit. He went to the bathroom to pee real quick. I don't know why I did this, I hadn't planned it, but I really wanted him to get me pregnant. So I took his codem out his wallet, he'd shown me it earlier, and threw it out the window as fast as I could. We got going a bit and he went to put it on and got Kinda pissed, and I told him he probably just left it downstairs and said we didn't even need it. Took a bit of convincing, but he got on board with it. After a few seconds. Ended up not pulling out. I told him not to worry about it, and that was that. Since then I've had a few tests but nothing positive, which is normal. It only happened recently, but I'm really hoping I have a baby in me. I was camping in the Appalachian Mountains with 3 of my guy friends. We were all laughing and telling stories around the fire one night. Around midnight, the friend next to me grabbed my leg and pointed at the woods. We both saw a man's silhouette standing there. We called out to him, but he turned around and vanished from sight. We were 18, no cell service, and camp was all pitched up at midnight. Too late to search for another spot where we might get away from whoever it was, and too scared to search for him. We decided to sleep through the night there with 2 men watch teams. No signs of him for the rest of the night. We got out of the woods all right. 2 days later, 2 hikers were stabbed and killed by a mentally disturbed men who'd encountered them on a trail near where we were camping. Every now and then I wonder how close we came to having our cards punched that night by what could have been a knife-wielding murderer. The post that personally fucked me up the most when I read it was one where the mom posted about how her mom accidentally killed her daughter. Basically, the daughter was incredibly allergic to coconut oil, but grandma didn't really believe it was true. Mom and dad went out for the evening while grandma babysat, and grandma decided to brush the kids' hair with coconut oil, and then when she started to react, grandma gave her a bunch of Benadryl and put her to bed. Because of the Benadryl, she was too sleepy to alert anyone. And by the time parents got home, it was too late. The whole post is just awful and painful to read. I remember that. It was heartbreaking. I believe I read that grandma asked mom for forgiveness a few years later to allow her to see her other granddaughter. Little girl was a twin. Mom replied, "You can when you bring my other daughter back with you." The post itself wasn't that crazy. It was some sort of crypto coin failed and lost all of its value overnight. The crazy part was the comments. So many people were threatening suicide because they felt so hopeless. So many depressing comments of guys who were planning to retire and now have to tell their wives that their whole life savings is gone. Super depressing post. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I had been driving about 45 minutes, and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired, out of nowhere. Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes, to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. The roads weren't empty. I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22, and then fell asleep. Sometime later I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because Was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out. Because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rear-view mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer, you know. The one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate. Fuck that, I thought to myself, so I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as came around it, there was a fucking car, parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rear-view mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, "Hey! Hey! You! Get the fuck out of your car! Now!" I noped the fuck out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. Moral of the story: don't fucking sleep on the side of a deserted road. In middle school, L did that eeny meeny miny mo game on every question for a Spanish test and got the highest grade in my class. 96%-98%-ish. Like and subscribe for more Reddit stories like this. Drop an interesting comment to feature in my next post.